Energy efficiency is about to become one of the most important factors in the entire AI revolution. AI data centers consume ridiculous amounts of power, so much so that electricity, not chips, is going to become the true bottleneck in the AI boom. One company which has recently partnered with NVIDIA is quietly changing the way electricity is delivered to these AI data centers. They don't make GPUs, they make the technology that powers the GPUs. This is Navitas, ticker symbol NVTS. So Navitas, what do they actually do? They are at heart a semiconductor company. Now these chips are used in data center power delivery, and they essentially design chips that help deliver power to CPUs and GPUs. These are the chips that power the AI. So Navitas doesn't create AI chips, it creates chips that help transmit power to the AI chips. To show you how the technology works, I've crafted an extremely well-drawn diagram, two diagrams actually, in which we'll look at the old way in which power was delivered to AI data centers, and then we're going to look at the new way power is delivered to these data centers, and this is where Navitas technology really thrives. Right, so we're going to illustrate it with this beautiful diagram. So traditionally, follow the pen. Traditionally we have our big power grid. These are the big things we see on the side of the road. They carry 13,800 voltage of alternating current. This then goes to a transformer, and the transformer steps this alternating current down to 480 volts. Because we need this voltage to get to a low enough point where we can deliver it to our CPUs and GPUs at the end. So from the transformer, it goes to a thing called a UPS. And what the UPS does is it creates perfect AC fit for servers. And the way it does this is it changes AC, alternating current, to direct current, and then back to AC current. So this creates a power source which is fit for servers, because when the power comes from the site transformer, I can't really explain it, but it's all messed up. And what the UPS does is it cleans it up and makes it fit for power delivery later down the system. So then we get 480 volts, and this goes to something called a PDU. And what the PDU does is it splits the power up into thousands of different feeds before it goes into the server. So we get 480 volts of AC in all these different feeds, and it goes into the server PSU. What the server PSU does, this is the thing that holds all the CPUs and GPUs, the big servers you see in the data centers. So then what the server PSU does is it steps down this 480 volts. As well as stepping it down, it changes it from AC to DC, because at the end of the day, our CPUs and GPUs, they want direct current. So it steps it down to 48 volts, and then it hits something called a VRM. And all the VRM does is essentially the same task as the server PSU and the site transformer. It steps the direct current down again into very small voltages, and then feeds it to the CPUs and GPUs. So as you can see, the old gen system is very long-winded. Right, so this diagram right here is the new generation power architecture, and this is where Navitas technology comes into play. So like the old gen, we have the traditional power grid, which has a massive voltage of 13,800 volts. You don't want to touch that. And this gets passed to, yet again, the site transformer. Does a good old job of stepping it down, so it's a bit less dangerous. But this is where we get a difference. And this is where Navitas comes into play. So the site transformer feeds this voltage to something called a SiC rectifier. And in this rectifier is an SiC chip. These chips are what Navitas make. And what's special is about these chips is it enables this AC 480 volts can be converted to direct current at an extremely high voltage. And we call this high voltage direct current, which is, it makes sense. So the beauty of this AC to DC conversion here is this is the last conversion in the whole process between AC and DC. And this is important because whenever you switch from AC to DC, you lose energy in the process. I'm not sure how it works, but you lose energy. So the fact that we only convert from AC to DC once is very beneficial for energy conservation. So then we've got the high voltage direct current. This feeds into something called a high voltage direct current bus. And like buses do in real life, it carries the electricity at a high voltage direct current. And then this direct current hits what we call it a GaN. This is also Navitas technology. So these guys have patents on these chips. And what the GaN does is it steps down this high voltage direct current like a transformer would, but does it with direct current, and it takes it all the way down to around 48 volts. Then from here on out, the process is pretty similar to the old gem. This direct current hits a VRM, which does what it does in the previous step, in the previous diagram, which sends direct current down to direct current, which then gets fed to the CPUs and GPUs. So as you can see, we've got SiC chips, which are able to convert AC into high voltage direct current. I've got GaN chips, which can step down high voltage direct current into a lot lower voltage. As mentioned earlier, in this new gen, we've got less AC to DC conversions at high voltage. As we know, every time this takes place, we lose a lot of energy, which is bad. Energy costs money. Also, we've got higher DC voltage throughout the process, which means more efficient distribution. And to explain why this is more efficient, I put together some A-level physics. So we've got the equation power equals voltage times current. Don't ask me why current is I. Got no idea. So given voltage goes up, we need less current to deliver the same amount of power. Another equation we use is power loss equals I squared times resistance. So since I squared has gone down, we lose a lot less power. Also, since I, aka current, is down, we can use a thinner wire. The raw materials will be cheaper as well. So it's more beneficial for companies to use a system in the raw material sense as well as the energy efficient sense. Right, enough of that diagram. Let's get back to the fundamentals. Oh no! Oh, that could be game over. Nah, that'll be good. A bit of a summary of what we've just looked at. So we've got Navitas' SiC chips, silicon carbide, which we saw we used in the SiC rectifier in the diagram, are able to deliver high voltage DC efficiently. Their GaN, gallium nitride chips, can step down high voltage direct current to DC, removing the need for previous technology like the PSU, which we saw in the old diagram. Higher efficiency equals big savings, and NVIDIA want a piece of this pie. Right, so I tried to have a deep dive into the deal with NVIDIA. And to be brutally honest, there isn't much detail out there. But this is a statement that NVTS released. So they're the industry leader in GaN fast, which were GaN chips, and Gen SiC silicon carbide chips, what we just looked at. And they're working with NVIDIA on their next generation 800 volt high voltage direct current architecture to support their AI racks. So the fact that a company like NVIDIA is bothering with Navitas is a pretty good sign that $1 trillion company is trusting Navitas technology with one of the key parts of their operations, which is AI data centers, and they're trusting them to play a part in the architecture that delivers power to these data centers. This is what is the key selling point. So NVIDIA's 800 volt high voltage direct current architecture will improve end-to-end power efficiency by up to 5% and reduce maintenance costs by 70%. You may look at 5% and think, that's not actually that much. But in the grand scheme of things, if NVIDIA cuts out 5% of the power they lose, this is billions and billions of pounds. And it's not just NVIDIA who'll be interested in using these. All the big chip manufacturers and producers will want a piece of this Navitas technology. Right, so I've sold you all the dream with the first half of the video. Now we're going to look at where Navitas lacks. Land lacks quite considerably. So if we look at the income statement here, we've got net revenue down from 21 million in 2024 to 10 million in the same quarter in 2025. So we've got over 50% decline in revenue. So I'm sure you're thinking, this is awful. Well, it gets worse. In 2024, with a 9-month trailing loss of $44 million in the corner there. In the same 9 months in 2025, we've got an $85 million net loss. This company's losing a lot of money. But I want you to stick with me, because despite all this, research and development spend remains very high. And what this means to someone who's got a decent amount of experience in the market, a high R&D despite collapsing revenue suggests that this company is pivoting AI data center power delivery infrastructure. So what was this company before this pivot? We'll give you a quick history. So traditionally, Navitas sold their GaN chips and SiC chips to not massive infrastructure projects, but to your laptops and your mobile phones. So these chips are probably in the phone you're using right now, and what they do is they help get that charge from your charger into your phone battery. So they relied heavily on Asian electronic distributors, which produce your laptops and your phones, and these guys are mainly based in Hong Kong and Asia. So they're supplying to companies like Dell and Samsung, and this is good and all, but there isn't the most money there. The markups are low, and the demand isn't always there. Whereas if we look at AI data centers, I think we all know that over the next 5 years, the demand is going to absolutely skyrocket. I did a deep dive into their Q3 report, and I found a few nuggets which made me feel less pessimistic about the shocking income statement that this company has. So one key point I found is TSMC, Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company, are exiting GaN production. So that means they're stopping production of GaN chips. Doesn't sound good on the surface, but Navitas is proactively qualifying power chip, another chip manufacturer, and other suppliers to ensure continuity and to ensure they're in a suitable position to be able to supply this AI data center demand. So this could sort of be seen as a good thing because TSMC have a pretty much monopoly on the chip market. They produce the most chips in the entire world. So branching out to different chip suppliers could be a de-risking move. So in case something did happen to TSMC, Navitas now works with multiple chip suppliers, which can hopefully weather any storm that hits the chip market. Another important quote we found from the Q3 report was, expect short-term revenue disruption due to requalification and supply transition. So as we saw in the previous point, they're changing suppliers to power chip and others. But longer term upside if new foundry partnerships deliver scale for AI infrastructure. The CEO of the company is expecting long-term upside given they could become an integral part of AI infrastructure. So the CEO shares the same vision that us investors do. He also said a key milestone to watch out for is power chip qualification results. So early 2026 production yields and any additional foundry agreements. So essentially, he's saying look out for whether power chip are producing the chips to a quality enough standard so they can sell them on. They're also looking at the yields from 2026, early 2026, and any additional foundry agreements, so any new deals they strike up with different AI chip companies. They're keeping it relatively quiet. Bear in mind, I looked through the whole thing. These were tough to find. They're keeping the vision relatively quiet, but I feel as though they're quietly confident about the future. So as you can see here, it's a $9.45 stock. We're going to have a look at where I think this stock could end up. So what do we need for this stock to double? AI hype. As you can see, we've got a little meme here. How did you get the budget approval for all of this? He just told them the name of the project, and obviously the boat's called the AI boat. So it's a bit banter there for you guys. Essentially, I'm not going to explain the joke. Right, I'll explain it. So essentially, it's played on the fact that if you mention AI in your plans, you get all this hype around it, and people pump all of this money in when there might not even be an actual plan, which is what this bloke has done. Sorry for explaining that. So let's look at the actual numbers. So assume we've got 60 million is our current level of revenue. And at 60 million revenue, we've got a market cap of 2.17 billion, which gives us a current price to sales ratio of around 30. So that's 2.17 billion divided by 60 million. So for Navitas shares to be worth $20, so to double, we would need to justify around a $4.5 billion market cap. So in this case, we would need $150 million in revenue if we keep it at a 30 price to sales ratio. So $150 million revenue is around 2.5 times current revenue, which is actually pretty doable in a few years. However, a 30 price to sales ratio is still quite high, so it's whether it will keep this price to sales ratio as it progresses. So this is achievable, obviously, if the AI pivot pays off. If it doesn't pay off, I don't know where this stock is heading, because it's gambling pretty hard on this AI data center infrastructure. So we shall see. So the moment their revenue stops this downward trend and starts an uptrend, this stock could go ballistic. Me personally, I've not got much. I think I've got around 1.5, 2 grand in this stock. I believe I'm currently at a loss, but it's one of these what I'm going to buy every week, put a bit of money in, average it out, and it's obviously a bit risky, but if they can pull off this pivot, this stock, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what I don't know. Anyway, let me know what you think of it in the comments. Let me know if any of my analysis was a bit sus, and like the video, and subscribe if you fancy it. Thank you for watching, and if you've got any stock suggestions, drop it down there. I'll have a look. Right, cheers everyone.